Hi everyone, welcome
Hi.
to Adoption Air. Hanna Sofia Johansson was adopted from Korea, like we too, to Sweden as an infant. And she is the founder of SKAN, a Swedish Korean Adoptees network. And she's the main editor of the booklet Birth Family Search for Korean Adoptees. Um, Also, you've met me several times the Central Authority of Sweden, which is called Family Law and Parental Support Authority.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to ask Hanna, can you explain me briefly the history of this network of SKAN and also and then the situation of the adoptions in Sweden?
Okay, yeah. Hello everyone, thank you for asking me to join you today. So SKAN is a small network consisting actually of 4 Korean adoptees, 3 in Sweden and 1 who moved to New Zealand. And so that's just a small network, and we sometimes have some activities connected to birth family search or supporting one-wed moms in Korea. And the members usually write some articles or publish some art or something like that. But we are mainly focusing on writing things or publishing things. And the booklet
You have also a website, right?
Yeah, we have a website and we also have a Facebook, yeah.
Yeah, Facebook.
But we are not very social. Sometimes people ask me, like, why is SKAN different from other organizations? And say, we are not very social. We hardly meet.
Okay.
And then you asked about the adoption authority in Sweden. Yeah, I have met them several times, but we recently moved out from Stockholm up to the very northern part of Sweden. And some of the adoptees, we are making this kind of joke, like they moved out from Stockholm so they don't have to see us. Of course, that's not the reason, but anyways. So they have one big project now, which is I think it started in the beginning of this year and it's for 2 years. And that's figuring out how to support the adoptees with birth family search. So that's their main project today. But since most of the staff, actually all of the staff, they quit when they moved up to the very northern part of Sweden. So they kind of started from scratch again.
Okay, I see. And so you wrote this booklet, which is a guide how to make the birth family search.
Yeah. So there are two versions of it. One is for people living in Sweden or for adoptees living in Sweden. So it tells everyone, like, how can you search for your paperwork in Sweden and what can you do in Korea? And the other one is more international, mainly focusing on the US, and it has also information about different adoption agencies in different countries. I think maybe even in Italy, actually. But this information about Korea is the same, and it's about how can you take the DNA test? How can you reach your adoption agency? What kind of organizations can assist you in your birth family search? And contact information to a journalist who is writing articles about searching adoptees and all kinds of things.
Yeah, I bought some booklets because you wrote also in English.
Yeah.
Some years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting and very useful job that you've made. And talking about adoption in Sweden, it's really interesting because for Western countries, it's it's not useful. It's not really not useful. It's not really. It's not. It never happens so often. So often that adoption associations or groups are able or want to meet central authorities or agencies of the receiving countries and try to influence and to discuss about the policy of the adoption. So can you explain me what are you doing in Sweden then?
I think it's because the authority has some money that we're supposed to support organizations for Korean adoptees. So if they want to give us money, they also want to meet us. So I think that's the main reason from the beginning. SKAN is not applying because we doesn't have a board. We don't have a board, so that's why. But other organizations that has a board can apply, anyways. So I think the main reason why they started to invite us is because we want to check what we are doing with the money, basically. And then we also ask us about other things. And in the end of all this meeting is like, is there anything else you would like to say? And then people start to say lots of things, and you should do this and you should do that. So I think it started like that. But also organizations like SKAN can join if they want to, or individuals can also join, as long as you are an adoptee. So, and we have one of these meetings, I think, maybe once or twice a year. And we actually travel all the way far from the north down to Stockholm to meet us, because we realize we cannot all travel up far in the north. But there is one thing which is not really fair, actually, because we also meet the adoption agencies. And if you are a member of an adoption agency and would like to join the meeting at the authority, they pay you for your trip. But if you are an adoptee and would like to join the meeting, you have to pay for your trip by yourself. We have complained.
Okay. Okay.
So, which is the situation of adoption in Sweden in general?
Excuse me?
Can you explain us
The situation in your country of the adoption situation, I mean.
Sweden has lots of adoptees compared to the population. I think the highest number of intercountry adoptees per capita together with the other Scandinavian countries. But now there are very few intercountry adoptees coming to Sweden. I think last year maybe 173 or 37, I don't remember. About 150 anyways. So now there is some kind of investigation going on, which also started just recently, about how to organize the intercountry adoptions to Sweden. Because basically this means that the adoption agencies, they cannot make any more money out of adoption because so few adoptions, let's say 150, and there are 3 adoption agencies. So I think adoption is changing in Sweden from like 1,000 children every year until, 150 or something like that.
I see. That's because some controversial situation with some countries.
Yeah, maybe 1.5 years ago, Chile started to investigate adoptions because, as you remember, Chile was kind of a dictatorship under Pinochet. And they already had an investigation about the crimes against humanity under Pinochet regime. But eventually, a couple of years ago, they also started to investigate adoptions under his regime because some of the people who were murdered by him, they took their children and sent them away for adoption, like in Argentina. So it was a judge. He started to investigate adoptions during the dictatorship. And then he found out that many of his children ended up in Sweden. So today, Sweden is actually trying to support this investigation in Chile. And as far as I know, about 20 or 25% of the children sent from Chile to Sweden were either kidnapped or taken away from the parents without permission.
But are you talking about the recent years or also in the past decades?
No, it's in the past. I guess in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I would guess.
Okay.
But it's interesting because Korea also had this Truth and Reconciliation Commission a few years ago, but they didn't focus on adoption at all. So in that sense, it's interesting. I don't know if any other country has been doing that like Chile is doing it now. But it's a well-known problem in Sweden today because it has been on media a lot. So I think people know about it. But of course, it's too late to change it anyways.
Yeah. And do you think that Scandinavian authorities can also help this investigation into this origin country?
I'm not sure if the law actually allows us to investigate in another country. But of course, we can give them information if we have any. But
okay. Because when I've attended a symposium in Brussels, in Belgium, last year, in April last year, there was also a representative of the Central Authority of the Netherlands, and she told to the audience that all the adoptions in the Netherlands were ethical. I mean,
oh wow!
Yeah, they put investigation on every adoptions, and so she also tried to comfort everyone that they are making very safe adoptions.
But we all know that's not true because many of the Korean adoptees heard of Jane Yongchenka, okay? And we know for sure that someone else was sent to the Netherlands with Jane's identity. So we know for sure that's a lie.
Yeah, because one of my questions, for instance, was how much do you invest on these investigations if there's something wrong in, maybe in the birth certificate, which you can find out that is falsified. As you told me, that actually can spend. It depends, but actually it's really, I think it's really hard to find out there's really a falsification on the birth certificate from the receiving country going and investigate in the origin country. I think it's really, really hard, almost impossible.
But as you know, Korea doesn't have birth certificates because that's not the way Korea works usually. And if I have one, it's not always with names on it. It's kind of a weird thing. But I have seen birth certificates created by Eastern Welfare Social Society, and these are false because Korea has a hojok, a family registry, not a birth certificate. But I have seen this because, as far as I understood it, it's because they needed a birth certificate to enter the US as an adoptee. But these are false because, of course, Eastern Welfare Social Society cannot issue a birth certificate. And no one can do that in Korea, in that sense.
You mentioned ES02, right? Who is an adoption agency in Korea.
Yeah. I think we have an agreement with Australia, maybe France, and the US, of course.
Okay. You, as a representative of SKAN, have you met also any adoption agency in Korea?
I have met Social Welfare Society, which is the agency that sent all the children away to Sweden. And I think they adopted away maybe 40,000 children, and 10,000 almost ended up in Sweden. I've met them twice. In 2007? No, sorry, in 2010, when I was in Korea for the second time, and I started my birth family search. And eventually they told me that, oh, we know where you were found. So they took me to the place where I was found, which they haven't told me for forever, like before. And then they also took me to a baby hospital in the outskirts of Seoul. And they said, like, oh, the paperwork you have, they are from this hospital, but that was not the original hospital. And then they just like that. And they also said, like, yeah, but we can take you to the area where you were found. And they did that. But that area in Vangchimney was already emptied. And we met two older women, but I didn't get much of a translation. So yeah, anyways, it was a dead end, you can say. And then in 2013, I restarted my birth family search, and I contacted KAS, the adoption authority in Korea. And then they requested all the paperwork from Social Welfare Society. And eventually, when I got the paperwork, they also knew who found me. So eventually, I met the policeman who found me when I was newborn. And I met him 3 times. So, and Social Welfare Society asked them, why didn't you help me to meet him the last time? Why didn't you give me his name? And they said, that's none of your business. So they actually admitted that they didn't give me the paperwork the first time. And I had a friend join me to the meeting with Social Welfare Society, and they know who she is. She's an activist anyways. So when she requested my paperwork, Hanna would like to have this paper, this paper, this paper. I got more and more papers. And after a while, the social worker at SWS said, I want you to leave. So yeah, so that was the 2 times I met them.
Okay. And coming back to Sweden, which you know more or less how many adoptees in general has your country? I mean, I know that you told me that Korean adoptees are almost 10,000 over a population of 10 million of inhabitants.
Yeah,
I think huge number.
Yeah, I think Sweden has almost 50,000 inter-country adoptees. I think so.
Huge number.
Yeah, it's a huge
compared
number
with the population. Yeah. And in which way do you think that adoptees can claim their rights in the receiving countries?
Oh, it's kind of hard. I don't know if we have been successful in Sweden, but we have been quite successful in Denmark, haven't we? I think so. But the Swedish adoptees have been organized for quite some years anyways. And maybe starting last year, some of the politicians in the parliament actually agreed on meeting adoptees, because there is a suggestion that they should investigate inter-country adoptions to Sweden, but we don't know what's happening. Now everyone is focusing on Corona, so we don't know what's happening with that. But it's kind of hard. I mean, we go to the meetings and we meet politicians sometimes, and we meet the authority, we write debate articles, but sometimes I wonder if anyone is listening. It's kind of hard.
We met maybe 5 years ago, in Seoul, and we have a meeting when we talk about try to create a network of adoptees worldwide. And the project is still not running because it's really hard to find this network from the local countries, but how we can, do you think, what do you think about how to create this network? Not maybe formally, but maybe every 5 years, 3 years, have a meeting between the representative of the associations or the at least of the adoptees, first in Europe and then also in the US, or maybe, for instance, in Korea.
But I think it's partly a money question. Maybe we should just do like we did the last time. We should just try to meet during gathering, but outside gathering, because when people are in Korea anyways. I think because also, as you know, gathering, even though it costs money, they still have a rather huge budget. So I think it's a bit hard, but maybe we should just start to try to have a meeting on Facebook or online like this again.
Yeah, because I've noticed that in the US, there's also now web meeting, conference call, video meeting, and also in the US, some adoptees some years ago they already met themselves. They were I think 10 people there, and try to discuss some topics and issues.
Yeah, maybe we should do something like that. Most people do have a camera and a computer, so maybe we should start doing that. Maybe we should start with the people who we met in Seoul and try to gather them again and see if anyone wants to join. But it's also like the time zone, different time zones and stuff like that.
Morning.
That's right. That could be the first step for a long journey.
Yeah. It would be. But I also think it's hard to work together and building this network when people hardly ever meet. I think sometimes it's easier if you meet people in person also to continue to work together.
It's different. And so it's a question that we made to different adoptees, and I want to ask you, what do you think is in this moment the best interest for the child?
In Korea or
general?
Everywhere. Yeah, but I think it's a bit
different fields. I mean, not just only political, but everything. What your
opinion?
Yeah.
I think the best for the child, if possible, is to stay with original parents, if possible. That's what I think. I mean, sometimes it's impossible, but the second best, I guess, is for the child to grow up in the country where he or she was born then, and have contact with original parents, if possible.
So domestic adoption, you mean?
I think first of all you should try to support the original family so they can keep the child if possible. I mean, not if they're abusive or anything like that. And secondly, domestic adoption, and that's also in line with the Hague Convention. I mean, inter-country adoption is the last solution in the Hague Convention. Today it's almost a first solution, but it's not actually. And also, according to the UNCRC, the Convention for Rights of Children, whatever it's called in English, I mean, it says that the child has a right to have contact with the parents and to know who the parents are and to keep his or her name and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's quite obvious that sending a child far away abroad is not the first solution, according to any convention.
Yeah, that's important.
What do you think is the feeling of of your adopted country toward adoptees?
For, excuse
I
me.
mean, do you think your Sweden is a very welcoming country?
I've been to Sweden, I think 3 or 4 times in the past years.
It's a bit difficult because when I came to Sweden, I mean, we didn't have so many foreigners or foreign-born people. And I think from the beginning, we thought everyone was like, oh, it's a Korean adoptee. But now I think people, they don't really know if we are adopted or just immigrants. And sometimes people do make racist comments to me, even at work or in the streets or on the subway and things like that. But I don't think that Swedes are racist, like open, like in the US. It's not like people are usually attacking black people or people of color. That's what I don't know. But comments, I think, and jokes, I think, are quite common. One of my friends, she's also Korean adoptee. She was eating lunch at work, and one of her colleagues is like, "Oh, are you having dog for lunch?" I mean, that's also a racist comment, and I think that kind of comments are quite common. And when I was living in Gothenburg, the second largest city, when I was a PhD student, and someone stopped me in the streets like, "Hello," and I was like, "Hello," and she's like, "Are you from China?" I was like, "Why would I be from China?" And then she started to touch my arm like this. "Oh, I'm so interested in China. I've never touched a Chinese person before." I was like, "What?" I mean,
that's all the conversation was in Swedish, right?
Yeah. In Swedish. But yeah, that's a funny thing. Yeah, you're having a good point here, because she obviously thought that I understood Swedish because she didn't say this in English. Yeah. So, and if she believes that I understand Swedish, maybe I'm not Chinese. I mean, there are Chinese people speaking Swedish also, but it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told her that she could stop touching me because I'm not Chinese anyway, so. But that's kind of a racist thing also, because she doesn't walk around touching white people in the streets randomly. So even though most people wouldn't say it's racism, I mean, it is racist because she pointed me out because I'm not white.
Yeah, if we should mention all the microaggression that we have to, face daily, I think we cannot stop.
No, we cannot. And one of my former bosses said to me during coffee break, because coffee break, fika in Sweden, that's like the most important thing, except at work actually, probably more important than work. And she's like, "Yeah, but you know, you and the other Korean adoptees, you were adopted because your dad, he's a white American soldier, and your mom, she had sex with white American soldiers." It's like, what the heck? Basically, she called me a child of a whore at work. Yeah. And I was like, what? I mean, I know that's a quite common comment to give to Korean adoptees, but saying that to one of your colleagues at work when you are the boss of that person, I mean, that's horrible, actually. But she didn't see the problem with that, obviously.
Yes. What do you think, which is the next future of adoption?
But I think the adoptions aren't very decreasing, like globally, because more and more countries, they keep their own children. Doesn't mean necessarily that the children have a better option or for life in these countries, but I don't know. But I think it's continued to decreasing because there is also surrogacy and other options now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some countries, they get richer, so it's easier for the parents to keep their children. And look at Korea, I mean, when they had moms, I mean, they're still struggling, but there is more support for them, I guess. And some of the laws have changed, and they're also organizing themselves and things like that. So I think it's will continue to decrease.
Yeah. And what do you think, how are the relationships in Sweden with adoptees and adoptive parents? Because I mean, I'm talking about activists, because sometimes it happens that here in Italy, when we talk about some issues of adoption, adopters are really afraid and scared. mostly if they have young children, kids, and they are scared and say, "Why? How come that you are talking in this way? Why you're not ungrateful?" Or I do hope that my child will not face, for instance, or experiment racism or aggression or whatever.
We want the children to not be like the three of us and ask weird questions. That's what we don't want to. But I think some of the younger adopters, they do know racism exists. And some of them believe that it doesn't happen to their children, obviously. But a few weeks ago, I was asked by the Swedish adoption agency, which I don't really like. But anyways, they asked me, can't you write something about racism and corona? Because they had this article with two adopted parents. And they asked them like, oh, has your child been affected by corona? Or I said like, no, it's more like we cannot go and pick the child up in time in China, blah, 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 blah. And I said like, but this is not really what's happening to East Asians and adoptees during corona. It's like the people are attacking us in the streets. So eventually I wrote some kind of article for them. And I think some people understood, but some other people think that, oh, this person is just sensitive. But since maybe 10 years ago in Sweden, if you would like to adopt or apply for adopting, you need to take a parental course. And if you don't take the course, or if you don't finish it, you cannot even apply for adopting in Sweden. So maybe that helped a bit. But I think in general, they don't believe racism either exists, or if they realize racism exists, they don't think it happens to a child. Because what they are saying to the children is like, but I think that you are Swedish. Yeah, well, we don't really look Swedish or Italian, do we? So
and love can aid everything.
Yeah,
because one thing that we discussed in one of the other conversation that we had in Italian is that actually, also in the parental courses in Italy, racism is not really
isn't a topic.
A topic.
No, of the course
of the classes. At all. It's not. There's nobody psychologist or educator who talk about this topic. Racism that adoptees can live and face in the receiving countries. It's really strange.
Yeah, I haven't seen the curriculum for the course, but actually the course is not supposed to be given by the adoption agencies, but sometimes people who are connected to the adoption agencies are still having the course, but they're arranging it under some other kind of organization. But some of them don't even invite an adoptee. So there are basically adopted parents, adopters, and maybe some experts holding the course. Which is also kind of weird because we are quite old now, so it's not like we cannot talk about our experiences. Because if I'm interested in adoption, why wouldn't I ask some adoptees? That's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that should change actually immediately is that, to introduce this. And furthermore, some adopters, I mean, while they were attending the parental courses, actually, one mother told me that actually was afraid a little bit, and she said, how come maybe my child will, since she was adopting from Africa, she was afraid that his child, can experience and live racism. And actually the agency told her that, oh, are you a racist? Why do you think like that? It's really weird. But actually now that his child is now the teenager, actually everything that she was afraid of, scared, she talked about, actually, he lived this situation actually.
But I don't know if
and so on.
I don't know if you have seen the contract between the Korean adoption agencies and the adoption agencies in the receiving countries, because I have a copy of the agreement between Adoption Center in Sweden and Social Web Society in Korea. And if you look at these agreements, it actually says that receiving countries, they promise the Korean adoption agency that the social worker investigating if the adopters to be should pass the home study or not, they should have knowledge about Korea. And if you adopt a child older than 2 years, you, as an adopted parent, you have to make sure that that child learns about Korean culture. You have to make sure that child keeps learning Korean. So quite hard, actually, requirements. But who is going to follow that up anyways? So I contacted the Swedish Adoption Authority and asked them, have you seen this contract? And I said, yes. And I said, well, it's not in line with the Swedish law, so are you going to enforce it? And I said, no. It's requirements that Korea has. It's not requirements that Sweden has. So basically that means that SWS is sending children away to Sweden or other countries, but it's not according to the Korean law anymore. It's not in line with Korean law, because what it says actually. And the social worker should, as I said, should either have lived in Korea or has knowledge about Korea, blah, 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 blah. And that's the result of the new agreements that I think were created after Yeonsu was murdered, this Korean child boy who was murdered when he was like 3 or something, 5, I don't remember, by his American adoptive father.
Yeah.
So I think that was why.
I see. And last question, what do you think about, there's a practice in nowadays, the child in Korea, before sending in the receiving country, has to stay in another foster family for at least, I don't know how many months, but at least 8 months.
2 or 3.
I don't remember the number of months.
Actually, for a certain number of months. I don't know why she has to stay there for a while. I mean, he has to move to orphanage and stay in the foster family, and then move to the adoptive family again. Because also we too, actually, we already in the 60s, we already had
70s.
the 70s.
I said,
we're old, and we are in the 70s.
You're getting old, I understand.
Already, had this experience, and I'm not really sure that he had that was have been a great experience for me, because I made another attachment with the foster family, father and mother and siblings.
Yeah.
So I think it's one weird practice, I think, for the kids. I don't know if it's really made for the best interest of this child, or there's something behind.
I think it's hard to know, because I am one of a few Korean adoptees who never lived in a foster family, because I lived at an orphanage all the time, except for when I was living at a baby hospital. But anyways, but some of the experts are saying if a child can learn to attach to a foster family, then we can learn to attach to the adoptive family also, like you are trying to attach them and you learn how to do it. But it could equally be a way you are saying, I guess, you lose another attachment. So that I think the expert have to discuss. But it's kind of hard, because I don't know. And also, if you would like to meet your foster family in Korea, you don't have a legal right to do that. And the adoption agencies, they usually try to prevent that. But what if that's the only person you remember from Korea, or the only person you can reunite with? So I think it's really problematic. And some of his foster families, maybe they're not very good either. I mean, some of them have many children of their own, and they are fostering children. And then we also have the other problem, like with Yeonsu, who got murdered, because his foster mom, she actually came forward after he was murdered, and it was in the news in Korea, and she said, I wanted to apply to adopt Yeonsu, but she wasn't allowed to by Holt, because Holt can get more money to sending away for inter-country adoption. So that's also that problem. If a foster family would like to keep a child, the adoption agency is losing money on it. So I think it's problematic in many ways. And in Yeonsu's case, we know what happened. He got murdered, so maybe he could have died in Korea, of course, too. But yeah.
Story, really sad story.
Yeah.
So would you like to add something else?
No, it's nice talking with you, and I think your programs are interesting, and I will follow them and post some of them on the SKAN blog later on when I got time to do
Yes,
it.
yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, see you.
So thank you very much
Thank you.
to participate to our program, and hope to see you soon, maybe in Korea.
Maybe in Korea after the coronavirus, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
again.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
So, and we thank the
participants.
participants and welcome and we say goodbye and see you next time.
Okay.
And next week.
Okay.
So,
Have a
thank you.
good weekend. Thank you. Bye.